I discovered the haunted history behind rock and roll, but it cost me my sanity. I never should have opened that door. The air crackled with a tension that made my skin tingle. I was just a simple music lover, digging through vinyls in an old junk shop. I thought I'd find a forgotten classic. Instead, I found whispers, angels and demons trapped in grooves of sound. The shop was dim. Dust hung in the air like mist, swirling on the edges of shadows. The smell of aging paper and wood lingered, adding to the fading magic. As I flipped through the records, I felt an icy chill on my neck. It was strange. The warmth of the sun outside faded as the shop consumed me. I could hear slight murmurs, like a faint melody in the air. Tension crept into my chest. The records not only held music, they held secrets. Dark ones. Ghost stories. There were tales, Bob Dylan's curse, or was it Jimi Hendrix's spirit? They whispered of strange occurrences. Phantom strings playing when no one was around. I chuckled at first, but something gnawed at me. I found a dusty old record, its label unreadable. The moment I touched it, a thrill shot through my bones. My heart raced. A low hum echoed around me. An invitation, or a warning. My fingers trembled as I slid the record from the sleeve. It felt alive, pulsing with energy. I glanced around. The other record stood sentinel, shadows shifting, dim light trembling. Suddenly, a loud crash from the back startled me. I froze. Anyone there? My voice wavered. Silence wrapped around me, heavy and suffocating. Then, a soft whimpering sound echoed. It sent chills down my spine. It was close. I knew I wasn't alone. Panic surged in me. I edged backward, the record still in hand, heart pounding like a bass drum. The whispers grew louder now, swirling around me. My thoughts raced. What was happening? I glanced toward the door, but a shadow darted past me. I gasped, and in that moment, my breath hitched. I couldn't move. I was anchored in a web of impending dread. The lights flickered, shadows danced, and I felt the room constrict. I had to escape. My heart pounded almost in rhythm with the chaos around me. I turned toward the exit, desperate, when out of the corner of my eye, I saw a figure lurking in the dark, its eyes glinting like shards of glass. The record slipped from my fingers, crashing to the floor. I screamed, "Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up." Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As my scream broke the thick silence, the figure vanished into the shadows, leaving behind a lingering sense of malevolence that clawed at my sanity. I couldn't shake the feeling that it was still watching, just out of reach, lurking among the forgotten relics of musical history. The shadows clung to the walls like hungry ghosts, whispering secrets I wasn't prepared to hear. That I stumbled backward, already knowing the weight of despair anchoring my heart. A murmuring chorus of sorrowful tunes crescendoed, echoing through the air, each note a ghostly reminder of what I had unearthed. The record lay shattered at my feet like a shattered promise, shards glimmering ominously in low light. I turned to flee, but impossibly. The door I just rushed toward slammed shut with a sound like thunder. The room seemed to pulse, as though breathing around me, the walls contracting, whispering of secrets too dark for ears like mine. Panic flooded my system, but an eerie calm seized my heart. Shadows twisted impossibly, forming grotesque shapes that slithered across the floor like serpents. "Let me out!" I choked, my voice frail in the oppressive atmosphere as the whispers surged into a chaotic din. Names echoed throughout the shop, musicians long gone, their cries merging with the pulse of the haunting melody. I tried to cover my ears, but the sound invaded my mind, wrapping around my thoughts until they tangled with the memories of those who had tread these hollowed boards before me, and then, with a deafening crack, the lights flickered violently. A brightness flared before plunging me into darkness, and in that perfect void, I heard a soft, anguished melody that soothed yet tormented. It rose from the depths and embraced me like an old friend, the chill on my skin twirling into an icy grip. Suddenly, soft footsteps broke the silence, echoing from the back of the room. I strained my eyes against the darkness, a futile attempt to pierce the veil. The whispers quieted, leaving behind a heavy, anticipatory hush. "What do you want?" I called out, my voice wavering. The footsteps stopped, and I held my breath, waiting. Then came the answer, tortured moan, low and gnarled from the depths of despair. A figure emerged, barely visible, features veiled in shadow, a spectral reminder of what had once been. Hair unkempt, clothes tattered, its eyes bore into mine, reflecting unfathomable sorrow. It raised a hand, pointing toward the shattered remnants of the record. I felt a surge of recognition wash over me, the kind that made my heart race and my stomach drop. The unearthing of lost fame, the destruction of legacy. The figure's voice slithered through the air, a breath caught between worlds. "You awakened them, now they'll never let you go," it spoke, crackling like a vinyl record nearing its end. A cold wind rushed through the room, enveloping me in spirit voices that warned, begged, and wept. "What do you mean?" I asked, confusion mingling with dread. "They want it back, but there's a price," the figure whispered, its voice a fragile thread tethering me to reality. I instinctively glanced at the shards of the record still glinting on the floor. "This is what they want," it hissed, drawing closer, the air thick with its spectral breath. Feed them the music." Suddenly, the shadows surged around me, warping into a cacophony of horror, as if the very air pulsed with the memory of two loud guitars and the echoing rhythm of a forgotten concert. I realized in that moment that the music itself wasn't just a record, it was a portal, a lure to souls trapped in a pit of discord. The figure lunged forward, its desperation palpable, but before it could reach me, the door behind me shattered, and bright daylight flooded the room. Shadows recoiled as if burned, yet I stood frozen, torn between the horrific reality in front of me and the promise of freedom beckoning behind. As I turned my head toward the light, the figure screamed a wretched, soul-crushing sound that echoed in my ears. "Don't leave. If you do, they will claim you." I hesitated, caught in the pull of darkness and the flicker of hope. In that heartbeat of confusion, the lights flickered, a dark whisper etched into my soul. The past wanted me back, and as I stepped back toward salvation, the lights went out completely, and everything fell silent except the blood-curdling howl that consumed the darkness. The silence that enveloped me felt more threatening than the cacophony of despair I had just escaped. Nothing but the pounding of my own heartbeat echoed in the emptiness, each thud a reminder of the malevolence I had just encountered. The room, once alive with whispers and shadows, now felt dead, as if the very essence of the haunting ghosts had been sucked out, leaving behind only an unbearable weight. I turned to face the now shattered door, its jagged edges glinting like teeth ready to swallow me whole. The daylight beyond flickered, flickering like a heartbeat, promising safety yet laced with an unease that tethered me to the shop. I took a hesitant step toward it, but the air seemed thickened, heavy like a shroud that clung to my skin. Suddenly, I was struck by an overwhelming sense that the shadows had not merely receded, they were gathering. My instincts screamed at me to run, to escape, but something deeper held me in place. The specter's warning echoed in my mind, "They will claim you." I pressed my palms against my ears to drown out the phantom melody that trickled back into consciousness, a siren's call that tugged at something primordial within me. As I fought against the itch beneath my skin, I caught a glimpse of movement at the corner of my eye. A shadow slithered across the ceiling, pooling in a grotesque form, tall and elongated, merely a trick of the light. I dared to look closer, and in its depths, I saw countless faces, each contorted in agony, mouths stretched in silent screams. The realization crushed me, a primal terror surging forth. They were trapped. Their eyes, hollow and empty, reflected a longing that pierced my soul. Lost souls trapped in a relentless cycle of torment, and somehow, I was now part of it. As I stumbled backwards, my heel kicked against a shard of the shattered record. Its sharp edge bit into my skin, a reminder of the price of their anger. The shadows pulled tighter around me, their whispers transforming into anguished laments that wove together into a chilling chorus. A cacophony of names filled the air, artists lost to time, their songs intertwining with the very fabric of the room. Once again, I felt the oppressive urge to flee, but as I turned toward the door, it began to melt away, like sugar dissolving in water. The bright daylight was snuffed out, and all that remained was the unmistakable stench of decay. I was no longer just an outsider in this forgotten place, I had become a part of its haunted history. No. I cried out, clawing at the air as panic clawed at my chest. The shadows thickened, swirling menacingly around me, forming a vortex of despair that demanded my submission. I won't be part of this, but my defiance only provoked them further. They lunged, swirling in a whirlwind of bitterness, shrieking voices clamoring for retribution. The ghostly figure from before emerged again, its sorrowful eyes now locked on mine, its hands still outstretched, words thick with desperation. You must understand. You have the power. You must play it or be consumed. The figures piled around me, an ocean of torment, a sea of half-formed memories assailing me with voices that drowned me in their intentions. Feed us. Give us the sound. They cried. The spectre pressed forward, but its form became more insubstantial, fading with each moment. Play. I echoed, a thought strangely foreign yet inscribed in my mind, tangled with the weight of their need. I could sense the urgency of the moment, that there was a strength buried deep within me, and that my presence here wasn't by chance. Then, rising from the depths of the shadows beneath me, I spotted an ancient record player, its dark wood polished but cracked, the needle beckoning as if it were alive. The moment I laid eyes on it, a wave of chilling recognition washed over me. Had to play the record, to feed them, and in doing so, perhaps unlock their chains. But what price would it exact from me? As I reached toward it, my hand trembling with both fear and determination, I was met with a deafening silence, weighed down by impending doom. I could feel their eyes on me, their desperate desires melding into a singular resolve that coiled around my throat like a noose. With trembling fingers, I lowered the needle onto the record's fractured surface, the needle awakening it from a long-forgotten slumber. A deep hum resonated within the room, vibrating through the air, pulling at every thread of my being as the echoes of despair began to play, and just as the music started to swell, the ground beneath me shuddered violently, fracturing as a chasm of darkness opened wide, threatening to swallow me whole. Join us! They shrieked, a malevolent choir rising from the abyss. You are ours now. And just as I fell, the screams of the damned mingling with the frantic notes of the song, I realized in that moment, I was no longer awakening the shadows, I was becoming one of them. I plummeted into the darkness, a sensation that felt both freeing and suffocating as the chilling rush of air erased all warmth. The echoes of the music wrapped around me like a cloak, sinister and seductive, caressing my skin with memories that weren't mine. A spectral wind coursed through the chasm, whispering secrets of a time long forgotten, and all I could hear were their desperate pleas, join us, become one with the sound. Suddenly, my descent halted, as if an invisible force had seized my body, suspended between realms of light and darkness. The melody rose to a fever pitch, swirling around me like a tempest, and in that instant, I felt them, the tortured spirits wrapping around my psyche, probing my essence, searching for the warmth of life they were so sorely missing. They clawed at my mind, their despair melding with my thoughts, lighting a path I hadn't realized was lurking in the depths. Images flooded my vision, fragments of lives woven together by sorrow and melody. Artists lost to the madness of fame, their genius devoured by the very sounds they created. I could see them vividly, faces twisted in anguish, desperate to express their pain but forever trapped in an echo of their final moments. The celebrated legends turned fading whispers. Glimpses of their past danced before me, stage lights casting long shadows, adoring fans screaming their names, and then silence. I felt their laughter turn to hollow echoes, their musical notes reduced to ghosts of harmony, drowned in a sea of despair. Each story ripped through me like barbed wire, leaving wounds that bled empathy, thrilling yet terrifying, each artist a thread in a tapestry of destruction. But there, woven deeper into the fabric of the shadows, I sensed something else. A darker presence lingered, more menacing than the cries of the lost. It stirred in the abyss, feeding off the anguish of these souls, growing stronger as I was pulled deeper into their world. It was as if it thrived on their sorrow, twisting it into a gnarled form that demanded tribute, sacrifices whispered through gales of laughter and torment, claiming victims to feed its insatiable hunger. No! I shouted, desperate to awaken from this nightmare. I felt the shadows constrict around me, smothering my will, dragging me toward a horizon of black. The spectre appeared again, its face contorted with urgency, pleading with me through the thrumming soundscape. You can break the cycle. Play for them, I can't. I screamed back at the gaping void, but the music crescendoed, drowning my voice in its relentless embrace. With one last surge of rebellion, I pulled free from the grasping claws of the shadows and wrenched my eyes open. Below me lay a swirling maelstrom of darkness filled with the anguished faces of a multitude lost to time. Above, the remnants of the shop glimmered dimly, its decrepit walls pulsating with the rhythm of the music, beating like a heart beneath a cracked facade. Then came a thunderous roar, shaking the ground beneath me. The abyss quaked in response, and before I could resolve the fear pooling in my stomach, the darkness lunged at me in a great wave. Panic seized my throat as realization dawned. I had unleashed something far more potent than the tortured souls. I had awakened the keeper of the sound, bound to this space by the very essence of rock and roll. Lord.it came forth, a grotesque amalgamation of all the lost souls, their faces merging into one horrific visage, a single eye glowing malignantly in the center of its head. It whispered secrets into the ether, its voice both alluring and sinister, beckoning with promises of fame and power, yet laced with the chilling undertone of destruction. Foolish child, it hissed, its breath cold enough to chill the marrow in my bones. You dare attempt to tame the sounds of the damned? In a flash, I saw the remnants of the record player pulse with newfound life, the needle spinning madly as the music grew in intensity. The abyss erupted with a catastrophic force, each note an invocation, each sound a witness to the suffering and glory fused in its history. I was falling again, but this time not into darkness. I was being thrust into the very chaos of the record, deep into a soundscape where the screams transformed into a haunting chorus, enveloping me. Play! Play! They clamored, new voices joining the fray. Recognizable among them were legends I revered: Björk, Hendrix, Cobain, all woven into this ghastly tapestry of sound. Desperate, I snatched at a tangible shred of will and grasped at the twisted essence of the shadows, struggling to wrest control from the keeper's grip. I could feel the rim of sanity teetering on the edge, and in that fleeting moment, I forced myself to scream, with every ounce of strength I possessed, no. You will not take me. Just then, the infernal eye fixed on mine, and with an unholy roar, the music came to a halt. Silence crashed against my eardrums like a monstrous wave, forcing the world to still. The faces in the shadows faded back, leaving only blinding light illuminating the surreal scene. And in the heart of the void, a figure emerged, one I had not expected, yet one I recognized all too well. There stood myself, pale and gaunt, eyes void of hope, clutching my own heart in a mocking embrace as the music resumed, darkly triumphant. Then, I felt a sharp, piercing pain rip through my chest, and as I looked down, I realized I was losing myself, not just into the abyss but to a more horrific fate. Join us, whispered my echo, and in that moment, I realized the ultimate price of the haunting melody. My very essence was being torn apart, a vessel for an unspeakable horror yet to rise, a marionette dancing to the song of the damned, compelling me to play until there was nothing left of me. No, the word barely made it past my lips. Before the shadows closed in, a blinding darkness enveloping my original self like a shroud, while the keeper grinned in triumph. And before I could fully comprehend the calamity unfolding, I was consumed, a single note reverberating through the void, resonating with the final scream that echoed through the dark halls of eternity. And then, just like that, the record stopped. The silence that followed was suffocating, a weight that pressed down on every inch of my being. My heart raced in my chest, and even though the music had ceased, the echoes of the haunting melody still vibrated within my core, twisting and tangling my thoughts into a labyrinth of despair. I floated in a space where time held no meaning, torn from the rhythm of reality and into a chasm threaded with wails and whispers. Moments stretched like centuries as I blinked against the harsh light of the void, desperately searching for anything that resembled familiarity. The air was electric, charged with anxiety, thickening as though the darkness had sent forth tendrils to ensnare me once more. It felt as if the hollow remnants of my echo, the specter of my past self, lingered just beyond my reach, grinning with long-familiar malice, eager for my surrender. Then, tiny pinpricks of darker shadows danced around me, flickering like candles threatened by a gust of wind. They twirled playfully, mocking my plight, as if they reveled in my anguish. Each one whispered a name, ghostly echoes of the artists I had admired, their voices similar yet warped, reflecting a pain I could hardly bear. Join us, they beckoned, the refrain threading itself into the air, twisting my sense of self like a serpent squeezing its prey. The very ground beneath me began to resonate, each vibration unfolding into a rich melody, one that stirred memories buried deep within my psyche, childhood concerts, sisterly road trips, the thrill of nights drenched in laughter and music, but that was merely a faint shimmer of the joy that once was, quickly overshadowed by something more sinister. The keeper's laughter reverberated around me, a taunting reminder of the horrors lurking just beneath the surface. With every note they breathed, the shadows thickened, merging and swirling as if the air itself was alive with haunting despondency, eager to engulf me. A figure manifested from the darkness, the keeper itself. It loomed, grotesquely tall, its horrid amalgamation shifting and reforming as it beheld me with that single piercing eye, now ablaze with fervor. "You wish to return?" It crooned, its voice a seductive venom that seeped into my very soul. "You seek the light, knowing full well the cost?" "Yes," I cried, torn between desperation and dread, the pulse of life resonating within me, urging me back to the world I once knew. But deep down, I could feel something shift, an instinctual understanding that to return might mean giving up more than I could bear. The shadows coiled tighter, their whispers rising in a crescendo until the very atmosphere crackled with electricity. "Join us," they repeated, this time melding into a fevered harmony that pulsed with desperately hungry longing. The music throbbed anew, its tempo quickening as if to drown out my reservations, and I realized they were not merely pleading for me to join them, they were demanding my surrender. No. I screamed, heart racing as I resisted the urge to yield to their seductive invitation. I could feel echoes of my spirit thrumming against their resistance, conflicting wishes pulling me in opposite directions, a siren's call to fame versus the chilling beckoning of anonymity. Yet in that moment, feeling shattered and lost, a flicker of light broke through the oppressive darkness, revealing a path ahead. Trembling, I stumbled toward it, barely able to grip the flickering flame of hope that illuminated the way, and yet the shadows pushed back with a sharpness that took my breath away. "Fool!" the keeper roared, its embrace tightening, threatening to crush me in its icy grasp. The shadowy chorus moaned in agony, their sorrow echoing against the walls of my consciousness, drowning me in their grief while they clawed at my thoughts, attempting to reclaim me into their embrace. Then I saw a reflection in the polished remnants of the shattered record. My own face, eyes wide with fear and understanding, gazed back. They weren't just lost, each face belonged to me, and I could feel the thread of their existence weaving through my being. Like a song, unexpectedly familiar yet terrifying. They were echoes of every person I had ever been, memories steeped in my essence, stretching beyond the confines of time. In my frantic desperation, I lunged toward that reflection, grasping for clarity, only to find the keeper lurking behind me, its maddening laughter piercing the air, threatening to swallow my resolve whole. Just as my fingertips brushed the surface of the memory, an unbearable sensation surged through me, an all-consuming dread anchoring me to the horror behind my choices: play the song, or become lost forever. The keeper roared, its echoes wrapping tightly around my throat, squeezing until I could scarcely breathe. Then I felt its melody, sweet yet unholy, beckoning me to surrender to its haunting beauty. It played in my mind, twisting my heartstrings, and in that moment of terror, I realized it wasn't just a song. They didn't just want me to join, a new symphony was being woven, one that required a conductor. With resolve gathering in my chest, I knew what I would have to do. The path was perilous, but the prospect of admiration, love, and even sacrifice rose alluringly. The line between madness and genius blurred further as I prepared to embrace my destiny. Yet, as I focused on the swirling darkness around me, I felt a hand, no, multiple hands grasping at my limbs. Suddenly, the body of my echo lunged forward, colliding into the keeper. As they tangled, a blinding shockwave erupted, bursting the shadows apart in a cacophony of screams and music, sending shards of existence spiraling into the void. But as I was thrust backward, I grasped a hold of a splinter of sanity and stood against the roiling darkness closing in on all sides. Heart pounding, I took a breath, feeling the familiar notes returning to my fingertips. "Let's play," I whispered, and the darkness around me shrieked in fury, the keeper's enraged howl swallowing my words, hoping to devour my soul alongside the music. And just as I began to weave my own melody into the fray, the air crackled with electricity, a dreadful portent that the true horror was yet to come. The shadows churned as a new melody surged through the cracks of the void, a familiar tune playing from the depths of my psyche, something I could not remember ever hearing, but somehow felt I was meant to conduct. Before I could grasp its meaning, the haunting voices around me harmonized perfectly, creating a sinister tone, giving rise to a new specter. "Welcome back," it hissed, and in an instant, reality warped as I was pulled into the center of their ghostly domain. The music surged, swirling like a vengeful storm, and I realized there were consequences far beyond the keeper's simple demand. And as I prepared to fully embrace the specter, dread seized my heart because one paradoxically glorious note rang in my ears, foretelling a darkness that lurked closer than I had realized, ready to devour me whole. Suddenly, the ground trembled, and a gaping maw opened below, a chasm filled with shadows hungry for artistry, shattering everything I had fought for. Join Us took on an entirely new meaning as the infernal echo of my past swelled around me like a tidal wave, and then, the entire world imploded, plunging me deeper into an abyss where I was left with a chilling truth. No matter how deeply I delved into the sounds of the damned, the music would never set me free. As I descended into the abyss, a visceral cacophony surrounded me, each note splintering against the fabric of reality. The darkness felt alive, pulsating with hunger and need, gnawing at the edges of my sanity like a starved beast. I tumbled through the void, my body weightless yet heavy with dread, every ounce of my being yearning to escape the grip of the inescapable. Visions flickered in and out of focus, bursts of distorted memories intertwined with phantoms of those who had long since disappeared, faces half-formed yet eerily familiar. They beckoned to me, their whispers harmonizing with the feral music that flowed around us, each voice a haunting reminder of the cost of fame and the souls that had been sacrificed to this infernal orchestra. That I could see it, an ethereal realm composed of fragmented stages and haloed figures, caught in a perpetual performance for an audience of the damned. My echoes danced before me, trapped in a rhythmic trance, their bodies twisting and writhing to the pulse of an unholy symphony, and suddenly, I understood the melodies were not created, they were devoured, siphoned from the life force of those who had succumbed. "Play the song," they whispered in unison, each note dripping with despair, their eyes wide and pleading, longing for release. I shuddered, feeling the weight of their despair pressing against me, and I realized the terrible truth: I was not their savior, I was their successor. I could already feel the strings of my existence fraying, the kaleidoscopic spectrum of my soul dimming as the echoes of my past steered me toward an inevitable fate. Desperation surged through me. My hands itched to compose, to orchestrate the wicked symphony that had become a twisted part of me. The keeper's chilling laughter reverberated in my ears, reminding me of the bargain I had unwittingly entered, and I knew that the only path left was to embrace the madness or be consumed by it. That I plunged deeper into the vortex, the shadows tightening their grip around me, eager to integrate me into their melody. "Join us," they chanted, a mantra woven with pain, loneliness, madness, and a promise of dark ecstasy. The world began to dissolve into a haze of sound notes ricocheting off the walls of my mind like bullets, asserting dominance over my very essence. I felt my sanity flake away like paint on a canvas of despair, and for a fleeting moment, I reveled in the chaos. But then, through the din and discord, it happened: the fabric of the reality around me altered. The ground quaked violently as an immense crescendo drew near, a soul-shattering hymn that drowned out the cacophony of tortured whispers. I instinctively covered my ears, but the noise burrowed deep into my skull, an all-consuming force that left no place untouched. And then, rising from the shadows, a figure emerged, a silhouette suffused with incandescent light, its outline shimmering like a mirage. I squinted, driven by an unbearable curiosity, trying to discern its features. "Help us," it cried, and in that moment, I felt an inexplicable connection. The figure was a ghostly reflection of myself, yet not its eyes mirrored the sorrowful despair I had buried deep within. I wanted to reach out, to grasp this fragment of forgotten hope that had manifested before me. "Please," it begged, its voice like a knife slicing through the tumult around us. "You can break the cycle. You must remember." The shadows writhed in anger, thrashing violently in an attempt to shatter this fragment of light. The keeper's rage echoed like thunder, its single eye ablaze with fury as it erupted from the void, a nightmarish visage of fury and madness. "You shall not interfere," it bellowed, the sound vibrating through the very essence of my being, sending shockwaves of fear throughout the void. The distortion ripped through me, and I found myself suspended between two worlds, the seductive melody whispering promises of praise and the anguished cries of the trapped souls, clawing at the edges of their prison. And just as I opened my mouth to decry the choices I had made, the keeper lunged, its jagged shadows racing toward me, determined to extinguish the flickering flame of hope that I and that heartbeat. It was clear I was faced with an irrevocable decision: abandon my struggle against the darkness and embrace the insatiable hunger that awaited, or cling to the shred of light offering the chance for redemption. It was a gamble with my very soul at stake, and then a thought struck: if I conducted the symphony of shadows, could I harness their power? Could I transform this nightmare into art? The answer surged within me, compelling, intoxicating, and terrifying. Yet before I could act upon that realization, the ground beneath me split open, revealing the horrifying maw of an infinite abyss. "Join us," it taunted, the cries echoing in every fiber of my being, resonating like the deepest chords of despair. That I faltered for a moment, the gravity of my choice pulling me down, the keeper's figure looming above with an appetite for my very essence. I could feel the darkness spiraling closer, hungry for my connection, ready to consume me whole. And just as I teetered on the precipice, a flash of blinding light enveloped me, illuminating the abyss for a single, heart-stopping moment, revealing an endless hall of mirrors, each reflecting not my face, but the faces of every soul lost to the music that I gasped, breath caught in my throat, knowing then that my descent had only just begun. Echoes of 1,000 lives shuddered in harmony, each a warning of the horror that awaited those who reached for the melodies born of despair. "Will you play, or will you be played?" the keeper hissed, clawed hands stretching toward me, as I understood with terror that the ultimate choice lay not between two destinies, but in the truth that resonated deeper. The music, once a sweet symphony, had long since become a requiem for the forsaken, and as I stood there, shivering on the cusp of this horrifying revelation, the mirrors fractured, shattering the very fabric of reality around me. I braced for a truth I could scarcely comprehend, knowing with anguished certainty that my answer would lead to either my salvation or my damnation, flinging open the gates to darkness that had long been sealed. "Join us!" the chorus shrieked in chilling unison, pressing against my psyche like a tidal wave. In that split second, fear suffocated my instincts, and I realized the unspeakable. There was more at stake than my identity, my sanity. The very essence of music itself was a battleground, and I stood at the heart of it, teetering precariously, as the chasm expanded, drawing closer, and in that moment of horror, I was left breathless, fully aware that the price of salvation was a melody that only one could play. And tendrils of shadows snaked closer, eager to claim me, their purpose echoing the deepest dread. I would have to fight for my very soul. As darkness threatened to consume me, the shadowy specters chorused once more, their dreadful plea resonating through the void. And I knew, no matter how I struggled, I could never escape the haunting truth: I was destined to compose my own requiem, one way or another. Every note I had lived, every chord I had strummed, now felt like a ghostly echo, tainted by the despair of those long lost to the shadows of music. The mirror shards reflecting countless tragedies spilled their grim history into my mind, a whirlwind of images and whispers that ignited new horrors. I stumbled back as the walls quivered, a grotesque distortion of the world I knew. Each fragmented reflection displayed a musician, frozen in torment, their faces twisted in agony or fierce longing, ghosts of rock stars whose meteoric rises had met with tragic ends. A woman screamed out, her voice swallowed by the chaos, fingers clawing at the glass, desperate to escape her own image. I blinked rapidly, trying to focus on the phantoms flickering before me, consumed with dread for what lay ahead. "Your fate is sealed," the keeper sang, its voice smooth yet jarring, a seductive lull that made my skin crawl. For every soul lost to the music, another must take their place. You will lead the orchestra or be devoured by it. That I struggled against the rising sense of inevitability, the dark rhythms pulsing around me like a heartbeat, as if the very abyss had come alive, eager for its next victim. The unsettling melody escalated, notes shifting violently like the skittering steps of an unseen creature lurking just out of reach. You see them, do you not? The ones who almost made it, who danced on the cusp of greatness only to fall trapped forever within their last performances. The keeper's wicked laughter resonated, turning my marrow to ice. Don't you wish to join them? To become a legend? You could be the one who finally breaks the cycle. Suddenly, the air thickened with an oppressive weight, and the mirrors flickered again, revealing scenes from beyond the veil of music. I watched as the specter of a once revered band, clad in leather and splendor, played to a captivated crowd, their ecstatic faces mirroring fame's euphoria. But then, I bore witness to their decline, the riptide of addiction and betrayal pulling them beneath the waves. Each strum of the guitar became a dirge, each beat of the drums, the heartbeat of a falling star. I turned away, trembling with horror at the future that awaited me if I yielded to the keeper's charm. Images melted into blackness, and just for a moment, I thought I could see the reflection of my own band among the lurking shadows, lured by the same fate. Don't you want to know the music hidden in the darkness? It teased. They will never know, but you will compose with their pain, their failure, and their despair. With every taunt, the keeper drew closer, shadows rippling in a grotesque dance, lit by the dim glow radiating from the mirrors. The hunger in its eye burned deeper than any I had ever known, primal and insatiable, but just as I turned to confront the keeper, the descent shifted abruptly, sending me spiraling back toward the abyss. The echoes grew louder, piercing through the chaos, a symphony of their despair rising in intensity. Within the turmoil, I thought I could hear a single voice, cleaving through the noise like a knife. Remember why you began. The ghostly figure of my reflection spoke again, its visage flickering like candlelight. Fight, please. Keep your hands from the strings. My heart raced, drowning in confusion. Did this fragment of light hold the answer? Was there a way to break free from the haunting grip of the keeper? Just then, an ear-splitting crack pierced the air, and I shrieked as the ground trembled violently beneath me once more. The mirrors began to implode, shards of glass bursting forth like daggers. Some sliced through the chaos, reflecting gory scenes of bluster and ruin, while others glimmered, hinting at a path of salvation. I dove forward, hands outstretched toward the fragment of my ghostly self, desperate to grasp onto the light of hope, of humanity, but I was too late. With a thunderous roar, the keeper lunged, and ethereal tendrils snaked around my limbs, binding me tighter, drawing me closer to the maw of eternal darkness. In that heart-stopping instant, all my fears coalesced into one piercing thought: I had been destined to join the damned. As the shadows closed in, a desperate surge fueled my defiance. I couldn't allow myself to be overwhelmed. I wouldn't surrender to the keeper's insatiable desire. Placing my pain into the music, I conjured my determination, the melody rising in a crescendo that threatened to drown out despair. My heart pounded as I envisioned a composition that could break the chains of madness. That I could feel the souls swirling with me, intertwined in vibrant colors, defiant against the debilitating shadows that sought to consume us. Their anguished cries morphed into haunting harmonies, binding my will to theirs. I closed my eyes, focusing on every fleeting note, as I pulled the echoes together, channeling their sorrow into a symphony that danced along the line between salvation and oblivion. But just as the first piercing notes erupted in defiance, resonating throughout the void, a powerful rift tore through the air, splitting reality apart. The keeper's anguished roar rang out, reverberating with lethal intent. No. This cannot be. You will not escape. My heart thundered as the darkness retaliated, tendrils of shadow snapping around me like wild serpents, hissing with rage. The very air crackled as I stood on the precipice of creation. The music rampaging through my veins urged me forward into either my salvation or fateful demise, and that was when it happened. The mirrors burst open with a deafening crash, revealing not just reflections but countless hands reaching through the glass, desperate and gnarled yet yearning for my connection. I felt their touch on my skin, electrifying and cold, and in that moment of pure terror, I understood that I wasn't just battling the keeper, I was becoming part of a legacy that would consume me whole. The question pulsed dangerously in the air: would I become an artist reborn, or would I spiral through the abyss, forever lost to the haunting refrains of those who had come before? As I fractured the darkness with the sound I crafted, the keeper let out a final shriek, a terrible storm of fury suffocating the air. I stood alone in that shrinking void, poised between creation and collapse, as tendrils of shadow and light intertwined. Around me, the hands grew fiercer, tugging me toward a fate neither of them could escape. Join us, the chorus echoed once more, a symphony of despair spiraling faster than time itself. And suddenly, with the ground trembling beneath me, I felt the deafening split between sanity and madness, the point of no return, knowing that whatever I chose next could seal not only my fate but the fate of every tortured soul that had ever dared to dream. As the keeper cackled with darkness and liberation bore down upon my shoulders, I clasped my hands tightly, prepared to either compose my destiny or surrender to the night forever. The world around me twisted and bent, a tempest of shadows and echoes. As I stood teetering on the precipice with my heart pounding violently, I felt the tremors of the keeper's anger ripple through the air. The cacophony surged and surged, a Mares call drowning under a phalanx of howling wind. A single hand, gnarled and broken, clawed through the shattered surface of one of the mirrors. It trembled with the effort of pulling its owner from the void, and I found my gaze locked onto that desperate visage, a face once radiant, now marred by despair, lips moving in a silenced scream. "Help us!" It wept, every syllable laced with an ethereal pain. This was no mere reflection, it was a vessel of lost hope, one of countless souls trapped in the music's snare. "Join us," the whispers wove around me, enveloping me like a heavy fog. Longing and desperation intertwined, a siren's song beckoning me to embrace the depths of the abyss. I felt chains pulling at my limbs, aching to drag me into their broken harmony. The keeper loomed larger, a sinister silhouette trailing the tendrils that sought to snare my spirit. I tore my eyes away from the mirror to refocus. There was something I had to do. If I could compose a melody powerful enough to overshadow the keeper's darkness, perhaps I could sever its hold on these lost souls. I envisioned every tragic story, every face contorted in anguish, each one a note in the great symphony of despair. In unison, they begged for release, each pulse of their collective heartbeat urging me toward the brink. I closed my eyes, thrusting away the fear that clawed at my mind like talons scraping against bone. The darkness tightened around me, insistent. The keeper's raspy laughter reverberated, unfurling like the wings of a long-dead crow. "You think you can save them?" It taunted, slithering closer, tendrils dancing across my skin, chilling me to the marrow. But the music burst forth, wild and free. I channeled it through my very being, each note a thread woven into an intricate tapestry that shimmered against the backdrop of dread. I felt their pain harmonizing with my own, a clarion call rising into a crescendo. The raging storm of despair collided against my burgeoning melody, but I stood firm. If I fell, we all perished together. Around me, the hands grew more frantic, prying against the glass with a ferocity that would shatter the very chains that bound them. "Don't give up. Don't let it take you," they cried, and each entreaty amplified my resolve. My voice, too, found its rhythm amidst the chaos, a soft lullaby woven into rock anthems, a hymn to the tortured. But suddenly, the keeper roared, an eruption of darkness unleashing a tempest that threatened to swallow the last remnants of light. "You want them? You think you can save them?" And with a flick of its wrist, the fabric of reality unraveled, and the mirrors shattered, reflecting not just the souls crying for salvation, but the darkest desires of my own heart, twisting them into grotesque parodies. I saw myself intertwined with them, lost, desperate, hungry for fame and recognition, treading the very path of doom. I faltered, hearing the dissonance within me, the horror that my true desire might align perfectly with this dark legacy. As the keeper's laughter erupted, echoing in disdain, I felt heat lick at my skin and a pulse of envy quiver in the air. "Join us. Share in our greatness." The voices swelled, and to my horror, I felt a thread of longing bury itself within my heart, a treacherous shadow that tempted me to embrace the very music that sought to destroy me. In that moment of wavering, the ground tore beneath me, and I plummeted into a swirling aurora of sound and despair. The faces around me melded and unfurled a grotesque masquerade of suffering and sadness, a rehearsal for eternity. Their hands grasped at me, begging with the same fervor as I once had. They needed a savior, someone who understood their pain. Suddenly, the melody cracked open reality itself, piercing through my moment of doubt. I glimpsed a path amid the chaos, a sliver of light amidst the horrors that tugged at my soul. You must remember. The ghostly figure echoed fiercely, its fragmented image shimmering in the void. You could still choose your own fate. The keeper, enraged, lunged, a full force of shadows crashing around me, clawing, biting at my sanity. I braced myself, fighting against the onslaught of memories and echoes that threatened to meld I into the darkness. This is your moment. The spirits shrieked, their harmonies surging in a desperate crescendo, and I embraced their pain, their sorrow, willing it all into a new symphony own. But just as I reached the apex of my creation, a bone-chilling shriek echoed through the void, splitting the air like thunder. Shadows converged, clawing at me from every angle, drawing forth every deepest fear I harbored, every doubt I had nurtured. Time slowed, and I bore witness to my own desperate reflection within the shards still scattered about, and with horror tightening like a vice, I noticed that one reflection was different. The keeper had sunk its tendrils into my own reflection, intertwining them, and for a fleeting moment, I wore its ghastly smile. As the symphony of salvation battled against the keeper's overwhelming presence, I realized, as if in a vivid nightmare, that this was the true horror. My very essence had become infinitesimally connected to it. Would I be the one to liberate the souls trapped around me, or had I already begun my descent into the haunting legacy of rock and roll, prepared to lose not just my sanity, but my soul to the keeper's insatiable hunger? In that moment, as everything hurtled toward chaos, the shadows began to solidify, and I sank deeper into the abyss, the air thick with malice and madness. Clawing my way back from the brink, I swept my hands across the void. With my heart synchronized to the tortured hymn around me, I knew one truth now: I was truly lost, enveloped in the haunting melody of despair. And then everything erupted, the harmony shattered like glass, casting pure darkness upon my soul. I was no longer the musician. I had become the song that no one would ever forget. The darkness swallowed me whole, an insatiable void where silence screamed and every breath felt like a betrayal of the spirit. I was enveloped in shadows that writhed like serpents, tightening their grip, suffocating me with their dread. As the last remnants of my melody dissipated into the ether, the keeper loomed closer, its presence burning with an eerie light that flickered and danced like a dying candle. Your song is nothing but a whisper in the night, it jeered, its voice echoing through the endless expanse, each syllable a lash of icy wind against my skin. I struggled to find solid ground, but the abyss undulated beneath me, an ocean of lost souls wrapped in a fabric of despair. You think you can combat my legacy? Every note you've sung has been absorbed into my essence. You are part of it now. The faces of the souls I had attempted to save slid like shadows in the corners of my vision, a blurred gallery of sorrow frozen in time, their expressions vacillating between hope and despair. I was reminded of their pleas, but now their fingers clawed at my consciousness, pulling me down deeper. Help us! Help us! Help us! No longer a chorus of wishes, their cries twisted into an ugly chant that echoed through the void, threatening to drown me in their agony. Desperate, I summoned every ounce of resolve I had left and focused on my heart, trying to isolate the last flicker of warmth that had tethered me to reality. It pulsated weakly, each thud mirrored by the trapped souls, resonating like a heartbeat heard from the womb. This is mine. This is my music. I yelled into the silence, attempting to harness the darkness into something potent, something uniquely mine, but the keeper's laughter rang out like a death knell, slicing through my feeble resolve. You see, your heart is no longer your own. It hungers for this music of darkness as much as it yearns to break free. Become one with us, it tempted, the seductive undertone seeping into my thoughts like poison. The depth of its understanding terrified me. For the first time, I began to realize how the keeper thrived on human ambition, twisting dreams into nightmares. I had thought I could redeem these souls, but the shadows loomed larger, their intentions threading themselves with mine in a macabre kinetic chain. Suddenly, a piercing shriek split the air, dissonant and raw. The cascade of shattered whispers erupted all around me, scraping against my sanity. He might succeed, a voice roared, a sound borrowing the timbre of youthful innocence marred by regret. He needs to choose. And in that second of clarity, light broke through the churning darkness, illuminating the figures of the other lost souls, their features crystallizing into emotions as vivid as wounds. I recognized Oni musician, once brilliant with passion, now a ghostly remnant, eyes bright with unyielding despair. You have to remember the music we loved. Capture it. Use it. He implored, extending a translucent hand toward me as if trying to grip the essence of my fading belief. Stop him. He cannot remember. The keeper roared, tendrils of shadow lashing out, striking the radiant light that flickered in defiance. I had only moments to make a choice. Could I replace the keeper's thundering chaos with something different, something that had once soared in the hearts of humanity? I could feel the sound encircle me, an echo of chords that had long faded from the forest of lost dreams. Music held us together once. Don't let him drown it. The musician shouted, his voice rising above the cacophony. Dig deeper. Feel it. The pulsation of the lost melody layered itself over the dread, wrapping around the faces of the trapped souls. I could almost touch their despair, juxtapositions of love and loss crystallized in time. A flood of forgotten tunes crashed over me like a torrent, offering refuge against the keeper's ever-tightening grasp, but as I began to weave this new composition, a desperate ode to strength and remembrance, the walls of the mirror realm trembled with the wrath of the keeper. The world rippled violently, splintering under the weight of our collective anguish. You will not escape. It thundered, a tidal wave of darkness crashing upon my back, each shadow clawing and gnashing, biting at my sanity. Now. Do it now. The musician screamed, merging into a monochrome haze of pain and ecstasy that colored the notes I reached for. In that single heartbeat, I grasped the music, held it close, knowing it was both salvation and prison. My fingers danced across the void, touching the ghostly arrangements no one but the damned could hear. With a final resolve, I unleashed the music, cascading over everything like blood spilled over white linens, pure and horrifying. The melody took form, breaking against the keeper like waves against jagged rocks, but just as certainty surged through me, as a symphony of hope exploded in sound and fury, the keeper's laugh returned stuttering, broken, as though it were on the brink of madness itself. You think you can cast me out? You'll only become more entangled in this dance. Your battle has just begun. As the darkness whipped violently, dragging the souls back toward the churning void, I felt the tether of my heart tremble, a rift beginning to widen. This is the storm before the silence. You'll drown alongside them. And just then, in the heart of the tempest, I glimpsed my reflection, this time not as the musician battling his demons, but as the keeper, its malevolent visage twisting and grinning behind my own terrified expression. In that moment of realization, I understood the horror I carried. The cycle could continue, my spirit forever bound to the keeper's insatiable craving for sound. Beneath me, the abyss churned, hungry and cold. I was spiraling deeper, the shadows reaching for me, intertwining with the resolve I tried to build. And as I plunged into chaos, my final thought trailed behind like a fleeting note echoing through the void: how could I ever escape if the music itself was my prison? And the shadows rushed forth, an engulfing wavy cacophony echoing with the screams of the lost. I was trapped in the dark, fighting my own shadow, and with an unrelenting tug, I was dragged further down into the depths of despair. The darkness had become my closest ally, and yet, it was also my fiercest foe, a twisted paradox revealing itself with startling clarity as I sank deeper into the abyss. I could feel the remnants of my sanity slipping like sand between fingers, and dread clawed at me with the giant hands of my despair. Music was no longer something I simply loved, it morphed into an entity that entangled and consumed, feasting on the very essence of my being. As I drifted within this chaotic chasm, familiar melodies re-emerged, their haunting forms weaving through the fabric of my mind. They were the echoes of those who had come before me, artists who had learned too late that the songs that made them legends also consumed them whole. The image of desperate hands clawing at the edges of reality ignited a terror that simmered deep within my core. I knew, with a heart-racing certainty, that I had ventured far beyond the realm of escaping the darkness. I was already entwined in it, a hostage to the sinister symphony that played eternally on repeat. Suddenly, a piercing shriek rang out, a haunting cry that illuminated the shadows around me. The sound cut deep into my consciousness, and in that moment of clarity, I glimpsed the figure of the spectre I had seen before. It flickered before me, bathed in a ghastly light, a symbol of hope tethered to the reminder of a lost self. "Remember," it whispered, its voice laden with agony. "You chose to uncover the truth. Don't allow them to drown you in the abyss." But even as those words echoed between us, I felt the pull of the Keeper surge. The entity manifested in towering darkness, its single glaring eye locking onto mine, filled with a blend of hunger and rage. "You dare defy me?" Its voice reverberated like thunder, sending chill pain through my bones and squeezing the air from my lungs. "You will become part of the requiem. You belong to me now." The shadows encroached like a rising tide, dragging me closer to the gaping maw of despair. I was falling again, deeper into those morose melodies forged from anguish and regret, and everything I had fought against seemed to dissolve around me like smoke. Yet within the wrenching grasp of despair, a spark ignited. The memories of every song I ever cherished poured in, echoing visions of concerts and whispered melodies shared under starlit skies. I could feel the warmth of that love returning, gushing forth in defiance against the coldness sealing my fate. No. I screamed, my voice rising against the shadows. "I will not be your pawn." Drawing upon every ounce of strength within me, I grasped the light that illuminated my heart and roared out the deepest echoes of loss and longing. My cries harmonized with the memories swirling around me, weaving together a fabric of redemption that couldn't be extinguished. The Keeper faltered, rage twisting into frantic fury as the tide shifted, the shadows trembling against the resonance of my becoming. "Join them." The Keeper shrieked, the tendrils clawing at my limbs, desperate to reclaim me. "You will succumb, just like all the others." But within the glowing light of collective memories, the echo of hope became a force unto itself. I sensed the ghosts pushing, urging me forward. "We are not lost," they chanted, their voices rising, coalescing into a crescendo that pierced through the chaos. "We will set you free." With renewed tenacity, I spiraled into the heart of the tempest, gathering the strength of the souls entwined with my own. Pictures flickered into focus, I saw their faces summoning power from beyond the grave, lingering hopes grasping at the edges of despair. I pulled each one closer, alighting on the cord of truth woven within my own heart, resonating with the rhythm of freedom long since quenched. They surged toward me, pouring their essence into my voice, igniting a sound filled with warmth and compassion, a raging anthem of humanity, and as the Keeper snarled and writhed, desperately dragging me back, I unleashed it all. The lost melodies transformed into a single, unyielding truth, transcending the boundaries of madness and sorrow. This was not merely a song, it was a declaration to the abyss that my heart would never succumb, but as the tempest raged, the final twist of fate revealed itself. While I fought to exude light against the darkness, I felt a breaching emptiness within me, a horrifying realization that the Keeper was not just a force I had to battle. It was also embedded within me, feeding from my deepest fears the genuine horror that threatened to unspool everything I was and ever would be. And so it became clear, the music was not simply battling the Keeper, it was allowing me to reclaim the very pieces of soul I thought lost forever. But as I fought desperately in that tempest of sound, the chilling realization ripped through me, the victory was never guaranteed. The Keeper's ghastly laughter faded momentarily as the chasm grew wide once more, and I knew my fate hinged precariously on the battle of my heart, a dance between salvation and damnation, reflecting the very essence of the music itself. That in a fleeting moment of clarity, as light and shadow collided, I resolved myself to a choice only the music could unfold. "This is our legacy," I declared, thrusting my hands through the shimmering barrier. I would either free them or erase myself completely, consumed in the beauty of sound. And as I launched myself fully into the tide, the shadows erupted in fury, the chords of my lost soul flourishing into new form, the melody surging forth to pierce the void, a final, defiant scream that would forever echo. As the darkness enveloped me in all its consuming malevolence, one single thought echoed through the abyss: welcome home, and then silence.